32 kilohertz. That's lower than CD, but subjectively it sounds just as good. And the lower sampling rate means a lower data rate for transmission.
The other factor affecting the data rate, and therefore the bandwidth needed for transmission, is the number of data bits used to represent each sample. In principle, the more bits the better, allowing greater accuracy and so reducing the distortion. Unlike video, high-quality audio needs an enormous range of possible levels, but we can't get carried away with too many bits per sample, otherwise the overall data rate will become unmanageable for broadcasting. In Nicam, each sample is first converted into a 14-bit number, representing one of more than 16,000 possible levels. That's enough to give excellent dynamic range and very low distortion. But with 32 kilohertz sampling and an extra bit added to each sample for parity checking, 14-bit linear coding would require a data rate of about 1 megabit per second for stereo. A data rate as high as that would be difficult to add to the existing television signal.
The key point about Nicam is that it reduces the number of bits representing each sample from 14 down to 10, but without sacrificing dynamic range, a process known as companding. At the same time, it enables the receiver to recover the original 14-bit samples for signals with low amplitudes, the quietest parts of the sound where it's important to preserve as much detail as possible to avoid audible distortion. So how does it work?
The original 14-bit samples are first grouped together into blocks of 32 successive samples. The most significant bit is made to be a 0 to indicate positive excursions and 1 for negative. Each block is then labelled with a number from 1 to 5 to indicate the loudness of the largest sample within the group. Range 1 represents from maximum amplitude down to half. Range 2 from a half to a quarter, and so on, with the fifth range covering 1/16 down to 0. By labelling a group of bits as belonging to a particular range, it's possible to reduce the overall number of bits transmitted and to recover some or all of the missing bits in the receiver. Range 1 represents the very loudest sounds. Here, only the 10 most significant bits of each sample are kept and the others discarded. Because the sound is so loud, the detail lost by losing the 4 least significant bits just isn't noticeable.
For slightly less loud sounds, a coding block would fall within the second coding range. By identifying the whole block as falling in range 2, it's possible to throw 4 bits away but restore 1 of them in the receiver. The signed bit is always transmitted, but the next most significant bit is common to all samples in the range and so doesn't have to be transmitted. The effective resolution for samples in this range is therefore 11 bits of the original 14. Similarly, in the third range, 2 bits are always the same, 00 for positive excursions and 11 for negative. The receiver adds these to the 10 transmitted bits, so the effective resolution is 12 bits. Similarly, in the fourth range, 3 bits are recovered, and for the very quietest sounds in the fifth range, it's possible to recover completely the original 14-bit samples. This technique allows the decoder to restore the full dynamic range of the original signal, while making a valuable saving in the bit rate.
Well, if that all sounds complicated, it is. But it does mean that the entire stereo signal, including parity and control bits for each block of samples, is contained within a data rate of just 728 kilobits instead of more than a megabit. And that makes all the difference in being able to add the data signal to the existing television signal without causing interference and giving very high audio quality.
Of course, there's more than just the transmission equipment to worry about. But with a digital path all the way from studio to receiver, will the studios do it justice by playing out digital soundtracks? I put this point to Chris Daubney at Channel 4.
Yes, I think ideally, and in the end, yes. I think to start with, a lot of the source material will be in analogue, certainly the sound desks themselves. Some of the recorders perhaps moving to digital as we go along, but I think it'll be a little while before we have any serious digital use in the studios in a big way.
Now, do you think that television really lends itself to stereo sound at all? I mean, or is the consumer driving you along a road which you don't really want to go down?
Well, we are starting, of course, with what will be the conventional size television set and the sound field traditionally much wider than that, and that will put some fair constraints on the program maker and on the effects to be achieved. No doubt if we get to high definition and bigger screens, then that could change. It's certainly, yes, the consumer world is driving it, but it's also a challenge for the program maker, and many of the program makers are obviously thinking about it again, dependent on the content.
Now, you've brought along a clip today, so perhaps we can have a look at that now.
Absolutely.
And so with no one in the world to help them but Ralph Nickleby,
His widow.
Uncle Chilton journeyed forth to London.
Ladies and gentlemen, pray give silence for Sir Matthew Pupker, Honourable Member of the Commons of England in Parliament, assembled.
Just a taste of what stereo can do for drama, for those of you who have managed to hear us in stereo today. We've been very encouraged over the last few months at the interest in Nicam stereo, and there seems to be a rapidly increasing number of suitably equipped receivers in homes. Only 2 areas at the moment, but Nicam should reach 75% of the UK by the end of 1990. Inevitably, there won't be many programmes in stereo to start with, but they are marked in TV Times. The rest will be in digital mono, but that sounds pretty good too. We, of course, have some information leaflets on Nicam, including timescales for the next 15 transmitters to be equipped. And we'd be interested to hear any reactions from those who have heard our programme today in stereo. Address, phone numbers and more stereo music coming up in a moment.
No time for much transmitter news this week, but do check Oracle page 697. Just one new television relay in the Midlands. Harborne is due on the air next week. It's for about 1,800 people to the southwest of Birmingham in parts of Harborne, Ridgeacre and the Woodgate Valley. Programmes from Central and TVAM will be on Channel 34 with Channel 4 on 67. The wide channel spacing calls for Group W aerials and they should be vertically polarised. Harborne is due on the air hopefully towards the end of next week.
Well, that's nearly all for this week, but do contact us with any comments about Nicam stereo or for our leaflets on the subject. Our 24-hour telephone number is 0962 822 444. Between 8:30 and 4:30 on weekdays, you can ring our local rate link line on 0345 078787. Well, we hope you'll set your VCRs next week at the same time, but for the moment it's goodbye from Bruce Randall and from me, Janet Salkeld, and we leave you with our music and pictures to herald the dawn of Nicam digital stereo.